Hello and welcome to this edition of Talk Vietnam. Now, you might have thought of this when you were a younger child or, perhaps while watching a science fiction movie. But have you ever thought about the fact that you could possibly use your mind to control or move things without actually moving or actually using any verbal communications? Or have you ever thought about the fact that perhaps you can use your mind or know it so well that you can harness the powers of the brain and also read the mind of others? Now, this is the idea behind this device right here. It's called Emotiv Insight. And with this device, we are going to go into this edition of Talk Vietnam, where we talk to the Vietnamese woman behind this wonderful device and learn more about her story in brain technology. Hello, Tân. Thank you so much for joining us here on Talk Vietnam. I'll hand this over to you.
Yeah.
Can you please explain a little bit about what this device has to offer?
Sure. So this here is an electroencephalogram, so EEG for short. And what it does is it picks up electrical fluctuations that emit naturally as we're alive and we're sitting here. So every single person in the world has a brain, and as the neurons inside our brain interacts with each other, it emits an electrical impulse. And this device tunes into those electrical signals, and then what we do in the software is we process them and we interpret them to figure out what it is that you're thinking, what it is that you're experiencing, and we get a glimpse into how your brain actually works.
Yes, it's almost like, those machines that, those older-fashioned machines where, there are the electrodes that connect to your brain when you go to the doctor, is it?
Exactly
It's the same
right.
science.
It's the same science. So the science for measuring brain activity, electrical signals from the brain, has existed since the 1930s. But traditionally, it looks like a hairnet with an array of sensors. And you need a dedicated technician to put the hairnet on, and it's usually used in hospitals, clinics, and labs. But what we've done is we've advanced the technology so that it can be used in a portable context in the real world, so that you can actually see your brain in action while you're at work, while you're in the field, while you're doing whatever it is that you might be doing, so that you're not constrained to a hospital or clinical environment.
Exactly. So, this has gotten me and I'm sure with the audience really curious about how this device works. And can you please show us a little demonstration?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way it works is very simple. You just put the device on, and each of the sensors have to connect to my scalp, because we're actually picking up very, very tiny signals from the brain that has to travel from that cortical structure through the scalp and through a layer of hair. So it's important to make sure that the connections are good. But now that the connections are really strong, we can now see my brain in action in real time. So what we're looking at now is a map of all the activity that's happening in my brain and the localized areas where it's most active right now, and the rate of the information exchange. So the different colors represent how fast the communication is traveling in that specific region of the brain. And it's also localizing, so you can see that right now the front of my brain is lighting up in the left temporal region, and then we're starting to see, the right brain pick up as well. So
that's incredible.
It's giving us a real-time feedback as to what's going on. And what we do is we take all of these electrical fluctuations and we interpret them. Because, it's really great to be able to see what's happening, but what does it mean? And what can you do with it? So what we can do with this is we can interpret these electrical fluctuations to basically interpret thought. And I can show you how we do that in order to maybe move an object. So we'll switch over to this app now, and it's running on my iPad. So to begin with, I'll train a neutral signal, and neutral is just listening in and tuning into what my brain looks like when I'm just being myself, so that it has an idea of what my brain, who I am and what it looks like. The next thing I do is I imagine the flower opening up in my mind. So I'll do that now. Okay. So now that I've trained it, I can actually start to play with it. So you can start to see that when I think it, the flower starts to open up.
So now it's a bud, and you're going to try to get it to open up.
That's right.
With your mind. Wow, yes. You see it opening up. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. That's more like it. That's more like it.
That's amazing.
Isn't it great that I can use my mind to actually affect something without touching it, without doing anything except the power of thought and translating that into something that, you know, the machine can understand.
Exactly, and it's a way to train your mind as well, train your brain to be able to, as you said, to be more productive in your thought.
Absolutely.
Since its inception, Emotiv's technology has been adopted in transforming lives. When Cora was 17, she had an accident while driving home. The car went off the road and hit the tree. She could never walk again.
I want you to think about like pushing the box upward.
Emotiv has given her another avenue for recreation, for communication.
You're gonna make me cry. It's made me very happy to see that there is an avenue that we can get more of her back.
So as we saw in the previous clip, we just mentioned about, this device being life-changing to a number of people. And the story of Cora comes up. I mean, she was paralyzed and she was able to use this device to smile for the first time using only her thoughts.
Yeah.
Can you please
Cora
share
is
us?
probably one of the most humbling and most inspiring stories within the Emotiv family. You know, it's not an easy process to work on technology when there's so much uncertainty, and so we often need to have those sorts of milestones along the way that help us to reinforce our belief in what we're doing as well. And so we're very, very privileged to have stories like that that come up and that gets shared, that allows us all to feel a sense of, affirmation that what we're doing is worthwhile, that it has meaning, that it has value beyond just technology. Because technology is very interesting intrinsically, but it's got to have meaning. It has to touch people in some way, in a meaningful way. And that's really the opportunity that stories like Cora offers to us.
The Emotiv EPOC, Tenless first-generation device, has been adopted and used in more than 100 countries worldwide across a spectrum of application areas. Everything from allowing a child to create a 3D monster just with the fantasy of his mind, or allowing a patient to control an electric wheelchair, or to experience the ability to type or communicate again.
I think one of the most interesting parts of the device is that it can actually teach you how to meditate. It's literally training your brain to switch off and relax for a certain amount of time per day, and to be able to go back and then read the results and say, okay, that's when I stopped focusing. Or I think to be able to measure the results of your own mental activity, I think that can be really, really useful. I, for one, would use it, absolutely.
Emotiv's technology was even used to create music, just with the power of thoughts.
We try to transform emotion into brain waves and brain waves into sound waves. And you have music.
It is phenomenal that you can control something just using the power of your thoughts.
Mark, you're controlling the beats. So this is like an element that you would control. And when you smile, then you choose another clip to something different.
Try and get as calm as possible. Try and bring the level down.
You have to close your eyes and just think about nothing.
Calm thoughts, if you will.
It is amazing. You kind of know that you're on and it's happening. And I looked round and I saw the smile on Mark's face, which is just the most endearing, amazing smile.
We have created music.
It's a wrap.
The latest invention of Tanley and her colleagues is Emotiv Insight, which focuses on optimizing cognitive performance. Normal people can use it in learning, monitoring their own or their family's mental health and fitness. Emotiv also offers API or Application Program Interface and SDK or Software Development Kit to developers and researchers who want to access to the world's EEG data or the section of algorithm to take this innovation and create more new amazing applications.
When and where did you have the idea of, going into brain technology?
It's been 13 years. So the first time I had the idea of moving into this space was in 2003, and I was 26 and trying to decide what I would do next with my life. And I had started a career as a lawyer, and then I became a technology entrepreneur doing middleware platforms for telecommunication carriers in Australia. The brain kind of found me in some respects because over the course of exploration, of looking into many different areas of possibilities, over dinner one night with some friends, we started to talk about the brain, and we talked about its incredible place in our human experience.
Yes.
We started to talk about what the potential of the brain is, and yet how little we knew about it at the same time. And so there were so many challenges and yet so many possibilities and potential. And after that conversation, I found myself just going back to the idea over and over again. I was just so inspired and so fascinated. And so we decided that we would start a company to try and understand the brain better, to seek a better understanding of the brain through electroencephalography, through EEG. And that was how we started.
Yes. Why did you decide to focus on using EEG?
Well, one of the reasons is because there are many ways of scanning the brain. You can look at MRI scans, which is essentially looking at blood flow. You can look at PET scan, but we were interested in looking at the dynamics of the brain in people who are living, and we wanted to be able to look at brains in a variety of different contexts, and it was much more sensible to look at the electrical signals because that was the only way that we could see people being able to wear devices over long periods of time. If we were going to look at fMRI, we would be restricted to hospitals, and there was no real path to scan large amounts of brain.
Yes. And you formed up Emotiv Systems, and as you said, this was 13 years ago. Tell us about those first days. I mean, this concept, obviously, back then and even now, is still a very new concept.
Yeah. So when we formed Emotiv Systems, which is the precursor to the company that we have now, our goal was to evolve the human-computer interaction. So the way that humans interact with machines up until that point in time is that we give specific commands to a machine and then it does something for us, whether it be turn on the light or open up a window or open up an app. It's all very much directed. We say that we want this command to happen and then it does that very specific command. But when we actually consider human-to-human interaction, it's far more rich. We observe, we observe facial expressions, we observe body language, and we can intuit feelings and emotions into the way that we communicate with one another. And that's something that's completely missing from the way that we interact with computers. And so at Emotiv Systems, our initial goal was just to find a way to introduce a much more natural dialogue in the way that we communicate with machines by introducing emotions and facial expressions into the human-machine dialogue. And that was a really exciting endeavor. And we did, incredible amount of work in advancing the fundamental science and in the algorithms that allows us to kind of peel back the interpretation of some of these electrical signals.
Tan Lee began university studies at the age of 16 and went on to complete a bachelor's degree in law and commerce in 1998 at Monash University. After being a lawyer for a short period of time, she decided to take on a new challenge. In 2003, Tan co-founded Emotiv Systems, a neuroengineering company that developed a breakthrough interface technology for digital media, taking inputs directly from the brain. Tan decided to move to the tech hub of San Francisco in the US, and her invention made headlines in the technology world. Today, Emotiv's award-winning technology is a recognized world leader and pioneer in the field of brain-computer interface with developers and researchers in over 100 countries. Tan was named National Geographic Emotion Explorer in 2013. She is also a recipient of numerous awards, including the G-Day USA Global Innovation Awards 2014, among others. She has been honored by the World Economic Forum as a young global leader since 2009.
What were some of the challenges in, forming a startup company then?
In 2003, it was very difficult in many ways. The first thing is we were pioneers in the field, and we were so very young. We didn't really know what was possible, and there were so many uncertainties at the time. The first thing that was uncertain was it even possible to decipher meaning from the myriad of electrical impulses that you can observe from the surface of the scalp? Obviously, EEG technology had existed since the 1930s, so a long time, 70 odd years, and yet so little progress had been made. So was there any meaning at all from this mess of electrical noise that's coming out of the scalp that we could measure? It's a very weakened signal, so the signal is tiny compared to all the noise around it. So that was the first challenge, and we were able to make great strides in determining that, yes, we can interpret these electrical signals. And then the second big challenge was, can we actually create equipment that was 100 times more affordable than the systems that were available at the time, while still maintaining an equivalent signal quality?
Yes.
Right? That's a huge feat in terms of engineering, and a lot of innovation involved in that alone. And then on top of that, the last big question was, would consumers actually buy, or would there be a market for this technology? Would anyone buy it?
Yes, the business aspect.
Exactly. Would the market be ready for this sort of technology?
Yes.
And all of these things, in fact, were not really within our control. It's a lot of it is exploration and a lot of unknowns.
Emotiv Systems went into a challenge when, in 2008 and 2009, the financial crisis in the States, obviously this was a very difficult milestone.
It was a very difficult time. 2008, 2009 was not difficult just for our little company, but it was difficult for everyone around the world.
And being a little company.
Yeah, it was the global financial crisis. It brought down many large billion-dollar corporations, let alone a tiny little startup like Emotiv Systems. And we really struggled at that time to launch our product into a market that was in turmoil.
Yes.
And we were very unlucky. There was nothing wrong with the technology per se, but the timing was not on our side.
Right.
We had to lay off most of our team, and we tried to survive through the difficult times as a tiny skeleton crew, but it was very, very difficult. And I remember, saying goodbye to my team, it's as if you're, chopping off your arms and your legs because, they're family. It's not easy to let go of a family that, tried to weather the storm with you.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult time, and it took me, I would say it took 4 years for me emotionally to get through that. But you have to move on. And, we were very unfortunate that the business, wasn't able to survive, but the idea survived.
Yes.
The passion survived. The vision for what we could be survived through all of that. And the learning, the experience survived. And I think that's the main thing is humans are incredibly resilient.
Yes.
We can learn from our experiences, and we can learn from the challenges that we're faced with. And of course, a business is not easy to contend with, and there are lots of things that you can't control. And so in those moments, it was certainly very, very difficult. But the things that I learned was how to actually build a company that would last, that would be actually sustainable. When I recreated what is now known as Emotiv, I wanted to build the company based on fundamentals. We went back to the drawing board and we really focused on building a company that has the chance of lasting, but based on fundamental, simple business principles of making sure that you keep your costs down. When you're young and you're in your 20s, you want to conquer the world, and of course, you hope that will work. But that's a very binary outcome. It's either you win big or you lose big. You win or you go home. But in this case, we are trying to build a company that will last. And so we focus on culture. We focus on building a team of people that really understand what it takes to create technology over time. And so it's been a much more enduring process. We're 4 years into the business now, and we've grown steadily over the last 4 years.
Emotiv Technology Vietnam was founded in 2011 to write algorithms for a headpiece that can understand commands from the brain and help people be more active in control, a field called bioinformatics.
Nhiệm vụ của Emotiv phía Bắc cũng như là nhiệm vụ chính của Emotiv Việt Nam đó là bộ xử lý thông tin sóng não. Trong cái bộ xử lý thông tin sóng não thì chứa các thuật toán để phát hiện ra các detection. Các detection ở đây đó chính là các biểu hiện của khuôn mặt, các trạng thái vui, buồn, suy nghĩ của bộ não về các vật thể, vật lý. Thì từ đó thì mình sẽ tạo ra các ứng dụng để kết nối các thiết bị bên ngoài. Ví dụ như mình có thể điều khiển được các thiết bị bên ngoài.
Emotiv Vietnam began with 13 young staff members. Brainwave technology was still new in Vietnam back then, but with the team's knowledge and passion, the future of bioinformatics projects looks bright.
Thực ra là tôi đến với Emotiv như là một cái duyên. Xuất phát điểm của tôi thì làm việc trong lĩnh vực kỹ thuật công nghệ, đó là một kỹ sư phần mềm. Tôi rất thích cái ý tưởng của chị Tần Lê để làm ra một cái thiết bị đứng giữa con người và máy tính để giúp cho máy tính hiểu được cái bộ não con người muốn gì. Thì từ cái thiết bị đấy thì giúp con người có thể điều khiển được các thiết bị này đấy, và làm ra những cái thiết bị thông minh.
Until now, Emotiv has come out with 2 products, Emotiv EPOC for entertainment and Emotiv Insight for medical purposes. Their success didn't just come from knowledge, but also the management of the leader. Tan Lê works with each individual at the start of the week, assists each group, and uses set criteria to assess each worker. That's how Tan Lê chooses, trains, and develops the members of the company.
Với một vị trí cụ thể thì chị sẽ đưa ra những cái KPI, tức là chỉ số đánh giá năng lực của mỗi người. Thì chẳng như với vị trí này thì họ cần phải đạt được những mục tiêu này trong tuần này. Sau đó cuối tuần thì mọi người sẽ đánh giá lại xem là những cái nhiệm vụ gì mà họ đã hoàn thành. Từ đó mọi người sẽ cải thiện vào tuần tiếp theo và mọi người cũng biết là mình cần phải làm những cái gì ở vị trí này.
Emotiv relies on cooperation between teams of employees from different countries. Therefore, creating a common corporate culture is a big challenge for this young leader. During company meetings, each employee is encouraged to speak their mind. This young leader fosters team bonding not only at work, but also in daily life. Each of her trips to Vietnam is a chance for her to get to know and motivate the staff.
So as you know, our market today is largely research customers. People use Emotiv so that they can understand the brain better. As we do that, we need to do a better job of identifying the key search terms for those specific market segments and make sure that we rank 1 or 2 in those areas as well.
Team building activities have brought employees closer and made space for them to be creative.
Chị đã xây dựng nên một cái văn hóa Emotiv, là một cái văn hóa là mọi người coi nhau như một gia đình lớn và chia sẻ, cởi mở, cùng nhau phát triển và rất là công bằng.
Chị Tần là một người khá thân thiện, nên bởi cái lẽ mà khi mọi người nhận ra cái sự thân thiện của chị Tần ấy, thì mọi người cũng sẽ dễ dàng chia sẻ những cái khúc mắc trong công việc, trong cuộc sống và trong mọi hoàn cảnh, cũng như là đưa ra những cái ý tưởng để công ty phát triển hơn.
Deep in her soul, Tan Lê is a Vietnamese entrepreneur who always thinks about Vietnamese people and wants to bring her success home.
Why have you decided to, start operations here in the country?
Well, my heritage is Vietnamese, and I've always had aspirations of trying to do something for my country of origin. And when you're overseas and you think about Vietnam, it's very easy to say, oh, I wish that it was more progressive, or I wish that we could do this or that or the other, that the country would do this, that or the other. But it's much more effective if you don't just sit on the sidelines and say, hey, they should do this, they should do that, but do your own part, right? And so I think that by creating a team here, I'm creating an opportunity for young people in Vietnam to participate in actually creating new technology,
yes,
in actually being a part of the team that drives this technology forward. We have a lot of talent here. There's a lot of potential in Vietnam. There's a lot of incredible intellectual prowess here as well. The challenge is to find them and to harness them, to nurture
yes,
them, and to give them the opportunity to work and to guide them to work in the right fields and the right endeavor. And so, we're trying to find the best and the brightest to help us, work on this pioneering technology. And it's certainly not an easy thing to do, but it's pretty exciting. It's a chance for these young people to actually have a chance to create something that's never been possible before.
Yeah. What do you think about the startup scene here in Vietnam?
I think that Vietnam is very industrious. Obviously, there's a lot of desire to create, right? To be an entrepreneur, to build companies and to try out new ideas. I think that one of the things that we can do for startups in Vietnam is to build a really strong ecosystem of support. And that support is around a number of pillars. One is talent. Talent is one of the key areas that any startup needs. You can't build anything without incredible people.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is that we need to have a better financing environment. And then the other thing is business mentorship. So those are the 3 pillars that I think is really important. Obviously people, financing, because most startups need at some point some sort of capital. You can't do it on $0, unfortunately.
Yes.
It does take. There's only so much of instant noodles you can eat, and there's only so much time you can go without a salary.
Talking about braving the challenges to get to success, Tan's story actually also, is a story that is filled with, a lot of thorns, a lot of difficulties as itself. And in the following, we'll learn more about Tan's story in her younger days, her earlier days in Australia, and the hardships she has gone through in order to get to the success that she has today.
Tan and the family moved to Australia in 1981. Their new life began at the Midway Hostel in Maribyrnong. when Tan was 11, she experienced a school that was not accepting for many of her differences.
Some of the children there said, "You're Vietnamese, you Vietnamese girl, ching chong, go home." All those things made me feel that, and I guess I questioned my identity. The sense that you were not accepted affects a young person in very, very deep ways. I guess I looked forward to classroom time, to classes. I could never face up to recess or lunchtime. Each day at recess and lunchtime, I would run, literally run to the library.
We hugging each other and we both cries.
Young Australian of the Year, and she took that title this year, so welcome to you, Tan.
Tan managed to study well at school. In 1998, she was named Young Australian of the Year and voted one of Australia's 30 most successful women under 30.
You know, throughout this process of you advancing at school, you know, a home life, you were still essentially, you know, living together and being Vietnamese because your mother, this was very important to your mother. How did she help you nurture a sense of Vietnamese identity within you?
My mom is someone who really respects her heritage, and she doesn't want us, as we say in Vietnamese, mất gốc. So she
to lose your roots.
Yeah, exactly. To lose your roots. It's very, very. That notion was something that she didn't want us to lose, right? Our heritage, our roots, and the respect for our history. So she encouraged us to speak Vietnamese. In fact, she forced it on us. If we were home, we had to speak Vietnamese. And if she heard a peep of English, she would tell us off or smack us. It was very important that we spoke Vietnamese to each other. Even my sister and I spoke Vietnamese at home. And the reason for that is because my grandmother could not understand English. And so if we wanted to be able to communicate with my grandmother, we needed to speak Vietnamese. And it really was an incredible role that really helped us to maintain a deep connection with our roots. Language and communication is so important. If you don't have the ability to communicate, you can't express yourself, you can't truly understand and appreciate what someone else is feeling or experiencing. And so we've been very fortunate that my mother had such strong belief in maintaining our heritage. And that's allowed me to maintain my connection to my homeland.
Tan admits that her mother was the one to shape her the most since childhood, and they have a strong bond with each other.
Ngủ cùng với nhau, ba mẹ con nằm cùng giường mà, cho nên là lại tâm sự với nhau, kể chuyện là hôm nay con đi học như thế nào, rồi bà ngoại làm gì ở nhà, rồi bà ngoại như thế nào, rồi con có chơi với ngoại hay không, rồi nói chung là những cái chuyện như vậy. Xong rồi sau đó thì là tới lúc mà đi ngủ thì mẹ lại kể chuyện những cái chuyện cổ tích để mà mình có thể đi tới những cái nơi mà xa và vui.
Con sao cái hoa này tại bên đây?
And Tan's mother also had a big influence on her decisions in life.
Nói chuyện với mẹ tôi thì sẽ thấy là một người rất cứng rắn, đầy nghị lực và một cái người mà cực kỳ thương con cái và rất là rõ ràng trong cái việc là mình phải làm gì và mình phải giáo dục con mình như thế nào để mà nó là những cái người mà có trách nhiệm trong xã hội, không phải chỉ biết lo cái việc mà sự nghiệp của riêng nó, nhưng mà phải có cái cống hiến cho xã hội nói chung. Tôi chắc chắn 100% là những cái đó là những cái ảnh hưởng của mẹ rất nhiều.
Khi tôi biết là Tần về Việt Nam để làm việc thì tôi rất mừng, và câu đầu tiên mà tôi nói với Tần là quá đúng là con đã làm một cái quyết định rất đúng, là bởi vì Việt Nam đầy nhân tài, Việt Nam đầy những người trẻ, đầy nhiệt huyết và rất là nỗ lực để làm việc. Thành ra đấy là một cái việc rất tốt. Thành ra khi mà con về Việt Nam để làm thì phải làm sao trưng dụng được tất cả những em xuất sắc về làm với lại Emotiv để chắc chắn là cung cấp cho các em một cái cơ hội làm việc và giúp các em thực hiện được những cái hoài bão của mình, cũng như là giúp các em có cơ hội đóng góp vào sự tiến triển của nhân loại nữa.
Now, whenever have time, Tan and her mother often visit Vietnam. Such trip helps nurture the love and dedication for the homeland.
How did you feel the first time you came back to Vietnam?
Well, I was very privileged. The first time I came back to Vietnam was as a Goodwill Ambassador for Australia. I had won an award in Australia, the Young Australian of the Year Awards, and I was asked by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to represent Australia in traveling through 5 Asian countries at that time, to share my experience of what it means to be a young Australian. And it was really incredible when I arrived in Vietnam for the very first time. I had the opportunity to meet with other young people. I had the opportunity to meet with our country's leaders, and I was able to realize how Vietnam had changed as well and evolved. I think, you know, this is very typical, but when people are away from their country, what they maintain is a sense of tradition, but they don't realize that culture evolves.
Yes.
So culture is something that's constantly evolving, and what you define as Vietnamese culture is something that is a living and breathing thing. It's different to tradition, which remains stagnant. And so my thought of Vietnam was a lot more enshrined in the tradition, right? Because this is what I thought Vietnam was. But when I came for the first time, I realized that it's a country that's young, that feels empowered. It wants to, you know, it wants to grow. It wants to find new opportunity. And the people, you know, are the same, right? It's driven by this country of passion and belief in the potential of the future. There's a lot of hope here. And so I felt a deep sense of relief, and I guess I was very happy in many ways that Vietnam had evolved from where we you know, when we left. Exactly, our memories of Vietnam was of a country that was in turmoil, that was still in transition. But when I arrived for the first time, you know, it was a country that was already kind of like in its teenage years, right? It had gone through that kind of like that troubled times and was starting to find its own footing. And so it's exciting. It's really an exciting country. It's constantly growing. It's developing rapidly. And each time I come back, I feel a sense of renewed hope in the future, because I think that there's still a lot of room. Of course, you know, in this period of time, it's really important for our country to make good choices for the future. There's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of challenges as we try and seek out what's the right modality for us, what's the right path forward. Our strategy of building a company in Vietnam is a long-term strategy. We want to continue to nurture talent here. We want to continue to develop technology and to expand our business. Right now, our business is more about technology development, but maybe in the future there will be a small market for the technology in Vietnam as well. So, you know, we want to continue to stay nimble and to watch the market and to find opportunities when the timing is right. But right now, for us, it's about focusing on our team and building our team and nurturing our people and finding new talent to add to the team as we grow.
Yes, as you mentioned earlier in the talk, you know, choosing to work on the brain and what it has to offer has been and will become and will continue to be your lifelong passion. And we hope you all the best in that endeavor. And we continue to look forward to all of the wonderful innovations that Emotiv and yourself have to offer.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And that wraps up this edition of Talk Vietnam. I mean, it is absolutely inspiring for myself, as I hope it has been for you to learn more about what our brain has to offer and the technology that is being developed so that we can harness more of the powers of our brains. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you more next time here on Talk Vietnam. Goodbye for now.